Hi, everybody. My name is Andrea Bose. I'm the Director of Clinical Services at the Applied Behavior Institute. I just wanted to start off by saying this presentation is being recorded for educational purposes, so feel free to comment or ask questions on the ABI Facebook page if you want to watch it later. So far you've met our wonderful lead BCBA, Amanda Maynard. She's on a couple of videos. She is amazing, has amazing clinical skills, and is a great asset to our company. So Amanda, myself, and our Director of Operations, Michael Bose, who also happens to be my husband, we will be doing some of these web classes every week, and I think we each sort of bring a different lens to things. Mike is a BCBA, but he's also a licensed school psychologist, so he kind of looks at things through a BCBA lens, but also that other kind of lens, which is really nice to hear about and hear different sides of things. So thanks for joining us. So what we're going to talk about today is we're sort of bringing it back to basics, is what I'm calling it. I know Amanda was talking about our telehealth update, which is very interesting and awesome, and sharing all those awesome boom cards. And it's amazing seeing all of our clients engage through telehealth on the computer. So I wanted to sort of talk about what ABA is and what the 7 dimensions are that define it, especially for maybe you're a parent who just received an autism diagnosis for your child. More times than not, you'll hear ABA. So really talking about what that is, because I have a lot of parents asking me, what is that? And when I do parent training, my first meeting or lesson that I do when I support them is talking about what ABA is and how it follows the 7 dimensions and how that what that may look for some interventions for their child. So I'm going to try to share my screen. I will be so proud of myself if this all goes well. Okay, I think I did it. All right. So what is ABA in the 7 dimensions? When I go through this, I really want to use everyday language and explain things in everyday terms. A lot of times with ABA, people sort of get confused because there's big terms, and as BCBAs, we love our science and we're scientists, and we talk about all of these things, but really boiling it down just to everyday language is my goal for this this class. So what is ABA? Applied behavior analysis is the science of improving socially significant behavior, and we use interventions that are research-based. So we target behaviors to increase. So behaviors we want to see more of, oftentimes that's skill acquisition or functional communication or another socially appropriate behavior to increase. And then we target behaviors to decrease, so that challenging behaviors that are either interfering with learning, safety, things of that nature. So we always target something to increase and decrease. And then we'll go through examples when I touch on the 7 dimensions. Okay, so where is it used? It's used in many different fields, actually, and this is like my soapbox, and if you know me, I always say it's awesome for kids with autism, but it's used across all different fields. It's used in industrial safety, substance abuse, health and exercise, gerontology, and that's only to name a few. It's really started to get used across the board in different fields, but it's most widely known in the fields of education, special education, and is the leading research-based treatment of autism spectrum disorder. Oops. Sorry. Okay, so what are the 7 dimensions? And we're going to go through each one. Applied, behavioral, analytic, technological, conceptually systematic, effective, and generality. So in order for an intervention to truly be called an ABA intervention, it must meet these 7 dimensions. All right, so first, applied. So sort of what I mentioned what ABA is, changing socially significant behaviors in applied setting in society or real life. So these are oftentimes behaviors that are important to the client and the caregivers and the family unit. Some examples may be leisure skills, toileting, social skills, communication skills, adaptive living skills, so like independent living skills, travel training. Those are all a few examples of socially significant behavior. And our goal is to improve lives and improve quality of life. So that's the A. The B is behavioral. We always measure observable behavior. So as behavior analysts, we want to know what the behavior looks like, and we want to define it. So what does it look like? What does it sound like? A good operational definition will not have mention of sort of internal stimuli, so things like feelings. We are measuring things that we can see that is happening in the environment. Excuse me. And we define any behavior, even the behaviors we want to see more of, that we're targeting to increase, and the behaviors we're targeting to decrease. And the premise is accurate data collection is happening if everyone is measuring the same thing as it's defined. So that's why you'll hear us talk about operational definitions. What's the operational definition? We want everybody that's measuring that behavior to be measuring the same thing. Analytic. So we make data-driven decisions. BCBAs love their data, they love their science. We love to collect data, we love to analyze data. And the reason why we collect the data is to identify a relationship between the behavior that we're looking at and then variables in the environment. I go a little bit more into this in another dimension, but we also take data because we want to make sure what we implemented is working. And if it's not working, we go back and we look at training, or we look at if we should modify something. We also look at patterns of behavior through data collection, but that's a whole other class. Technological is next. So everything is described clearly and concisely. So when the intervention is implemented, it is done so as written. So oftentimes you'll see behavior analysts or behavior techs have, I feel like I'm a grandma in the field at this point, because I've been a BCBA for 11 years, and we did the clipboards. A lot of times people, now they're using iPads or tablets to take data, but all of the interventions that they are implementing are written out. So prompting is written out, error correction is written out, how you reinforce is written out so that it is clear and it's concise. So we do this with written behavior support plans. We do this with skill acquisition programs. It increases the likelihood that an intervention is implemented as written or intended. And so I just kind of pose a rhetorical question. What happens if the intervention is confusing and not written clearly? It's not going to be implemented correctly. Everybody's going to be running it differently, and then your data is going to be not accurate. Conceptually systematic. So the intervention is based on the principles of applied behavior analysis. This comes from the research in our field. Effective. So are the interventions we implemented working for the goals of that specific client? We always want meaningful behavior change. And that is why we take data, but we also take something that you may have heard of called baseline data. So this is the data that shows us what the behavior looks like before we implement the intervention. And looking at that data in baseline, and then when intervention is implemented, can help us determine how effective the intervention is. What is effective for one client is different than what's effective for another client. So that's why everything with ABA is individualized. Everybody has it's all individualized and everybody has separate goals. So it's really looking at what does that client need, taking behavior data on that client and determining what are appropriate goals and criterion for them. Oops, sorry. Last one, my favorite one. If behavior change should be occurring, so generality, if behavior change should be occurring in the environment, that is not originally taught in. So if we're teaching a skill, let's say in a clinic or in a classroom, it is said to be generalized when that skill or that behavior is engaged in other environments or across other people. And we want it to last over time, across behaviors, across environments, and across people. So this is, you know, this is the root of that ABA is socially significant. So we're implementing things for these behavior changes, and then we are programming from the beginning, or we should be, what do I want this behavior to look like in the natural environment, coming into contact with natural contingencies. So ways that we do that, and generalization can be a whole other web class. I'll do that one too. It can be, you know, taking, if you're teaching a client how to order from a restaurant, you would want to have the menu from that restaurant in the training environment to increase the likelihood that it will be generalized when you go to that restaurant. I was going to have questions, but I don't, hold on. Does anybody have any questions in the chat part or comments? If you're watching the recording and you have questions or comments, thank you. I don't know who that is, but thank you. It just says iPhone. If you have questions or comments, you can put them on the Facebook ABI website, and I would be happy to answer them. Next week, I will be talking about reinforcement, another one of my favorite terms, and how that is defined in applied behavior analysis, and real life examples also. So thanks for tuning in, and I will see you guys next week.